Hey, Diana. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. Give everybody a few minutes to get started. I'm a little bit early. Hope everybody's doing well. The sun is out today. It's a little cool, but at least it's the sun is shining. We'll give it just a couple more minutes. It looks like, I know we've got a few people watching, but I've been told by a couple of others they're going to join us, so let's just give them a moment. We do have a couple of things to talk about today, in addition to taking any questions that we may have. All right, it is 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started, and anybody joining later can catch the replay or jump in as they wish. So welcome back to Tuesday Talk. I am Deanna Sizemore, Director of Compliance with Bim Group. Happy to jump on every week, answer questions that you may have, and talk about any up and coming compliance issues or compliance concerns that you may have. The past few weeks, since we started Tuesday Talk, have really been focused on COVID-19 and the what if, what how, and how does this work, and how do we do that. So today we're going to continue that conversation, but more in light of what now if we're going to return back to work. How do we do that safely? And of course, answer any questions that you may have. Feel free at any time to pop a question in the chat, and I will go back and answer it. If I happen to miss it and I don't answer it, please know that we will get it when we do the weekly FAQ. Last week's FAQ is not up yet. I have been trying to get that done and over to our marketing person, and I have not been able to do that, but hopefully I'll get that done today, as well as any comments from today. So my apologies for that. Couple of things I wanted to make you aware of, because we've had a lot of questions regarding unemployment, how an employee can get unemployment, what makes them eligible or not eligible for unemployment. I wanted to point out that the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce has uploaded a wonderful FAQ guide on their website. It's an unemployment guide, and we will post the link to this on our Tuesday Talk page. But it's kcc.ky.gov, and if you scroll down to the bottom right under Employer, there will be a section I believe it just says COVID-19, and there'll be a section that says Employer Handbook for COVID-19. And that is a great unemployment guide. It's in a PDF. It answers a lot of questions, and I think it's a great resource to have. Another publication that I think will be good from a federal level is OSHA has issued a workplace safety guide, and that is OSHA.gov, and the publication number is OSHA 3990. And again, we will post a link to both of those documents on our Tuesday Talk page. Also wanted to point out, as we all know, if we're in Kentucky, is that the governor has reopened phase 1 of reopening our economy, which started with our healthcare facilities and giving them an opportunity to meet certain guidelines and certain requirements. Hospital outpatient healthcare clinics, medical offices, physical therapy, chiropractor, eye doctor, dentist. There is a lot of safety protocols that have to take place. So if you are a employer in one of those settings, please make sure you've gone to the state website and read what you need to do to be compliant. As we talk about return to work later in this talk, it'll be more focused on overall federal level, but there are going to be state guidelines. I know I have a very good friend who's a dentist, and he shares office with another dentist, and he's like reading the Kentucky state guidelines. There's just a lot of work they're going to have to do to make it work. I know my eye doctor's only open like 4 hours a day. It's by appointment only. They're spacing out appointments in big increments so that people aren't running into each other. So phase 1 started this week. It does not apply to certain settings and elective procedures. However, elective procedures are set to start next week, which would allow outpatient surgeries and other invasive procedures to assume. Again, ensuring that hospitals and facilities meet strict guidelines. The general phasing, the next step would be phase 3. That's May 13th. Phase 4 is scheduled for Wednesday, May 27th. We could see those dates fluctuate, but we know that we're in the process of bringing the economy back. I do know from my standpoint, we are probably homeschooling and working from home if you're in a more white-collar industry through the end of summer, and that's just an assumption based on some of the timelines I've seen. The goal is to get all the medical facilities and ancillary facilities from that back and running and ensuring that it's not causing another outbreak before going to the next phase. I did see something earlier today that right now the governor is recommending everyone wears a face mask when out in public. Right now it's just a strong suggestion. That could change. I'm not sure. So just stay tuned to the news. Again, if you're in Kentucky, watch Andy at 5 to figure out what's next. So I do know that unemployment is continuing. They're continuing to get claims. They've received over 283,000 claims from March that have been processed. They have an additional 149,000 for March and April that were being processed earlier this week. And the note is that about 150,000 of those are first-time payments. And there's some more payments from March scheduled to go out later this week. So a lot of unemployment, people, a lot of frustration with the unemployment office. And, to that I would say, if we're overwhelmed being at home and trying to do business from at home, the unemployment office is completely overwhelmed because of the number of people that are calling. So I would say be patient. And I know that's hard, especially when you're not able to work and get income. But they're trying to figure this out too. So just be aware that it's going to be a long wait times. I've seen folks on Facebook talking about 5, 6, 7 hour wait times, which is crazy. But I think that's where we are right now. So we just need to be patient with that. So from the reopening of Kentucky, I want to move, and first I want to see if there's any questions. Welcome those that have just joined us. And point out that if you missed it, the Paycheck Protection Program got an increase. But again, that money's going out quicker than it can come in. Right now, the loan processing application is available through June 30th. Again, contingent upon funds. There were some changes made that nonprofits, veterans organizations, tribal business concerns, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, independent contractors can all apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. And there's certain instances for industries with more than 500 employees that can apply. I don't have those specifics, so if you need those, let me know. Again, just be aware that that is available right now if you missed the first round. So we also are seeing EEOC issue updates and technical assistance bulletins. They've got a great publication called What You Should Know About COVID-19 and the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. So amongst everything that we're dealing with folks coming back to work, we have OSHA, we have the EEOC, we have benefits, trying to sort that out. We have people filing for unemployment. We've got people being called back to work that aren't coming back to work. So a lot of different moving parts and pieces. And as I jump into the core of our program today, it's really about the steps to take to get ready to reopen. We can't wait until the governor says, hey, next Friday we can reopen. We need to be preparing now. And this is going to be probably maybe a 4 or 5 part series. I want to take it slow, and I don't want to throw up too much information at once. And still be aware of your time. There really is no particular handout. I will say, and we'll post this on the website as well, is Think HR has a nice return to work checklist. So we'll post this with the Tuesday talk as well. I do have a question online I want to answer, and I also have a question from this same person via email that I want to answer. So the question online is, since childcare is closed and not sure when they will reopen, do you know if employees are allowed to make changes to their dependent care FSA annual election if they aren't spending money on childcare right now? So I did just answer this question for someone in our office yesterday. And I know it was just yesterday, but that seems like a lifetime ago. So let me pull up the answer. If an employee takes a leave of absence, they may no longer be considered gainfully employed and eligible for dependent care reimbursements during their leave. In general, this is determined on a daily basis. However, there's an exception for certain short temporary absences or part-time employment. And I think we're in that exception of a short temporary absence, possibly. The exception is based on the IRS regulations issuing a safe harbor, which and short temporary absence is up to 2 weeks, but it can be longer. Essentially, reimbursements are subject to the same rules as an FSA. The period must be within 12 months. If DCAPs are underspent, they lead to forfeited money. They're not subject to COBRA. Employers can provide a spend down provision in their plan documents. If the plan document does not already provide one, the funds are forfeited. Under cafeteria plans, though, for DCAPs, if there's a change in status, a change in cost, FMLA, they can make those changes. So if we have a dependent care change in status or cost and coverage events, we can change our DCAP election. If we're in, we have a new work schedule, number of hours are different, you increase or decrease the election, and newly added, all of that to say, child's daycare is closed, employee may decrease or cancel their election. So Becky, to answer your question succinctly, yes, they can if the daycare is closed. I would just document it, work with your third-party administrator who manages your DCAP program, and move forward from there. And if you need this documentation, Becky, I'm happy to send it to you. It will also be in the FAQs for Tuesday Talk. The other question that Becky sent me earlier prior to the call was regarding plan documentation and policy booklets, or policies and employee handbooklets. So she said, we've been hearing on some webinars that we should add the FFCRA policies to our plan wrap document, and wondered if we should do that or how do they go about doing that. And they mentioned creating a policy about FFCRA, albeit temporary, so that for it being a temporary policy, and so far no one has used them, but do they really need to add it to their handbook? So two pieces here. FFCRA does a couple of things. It's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. You're welcome, Becky. The first thing it does is it allows any type of COVID testing, and in some carrier cases, treatment, to be covered at 100%. If you're a self-funded employer who has created your own self-funded certificate of coverage booklet or summary plan description for the health plan, you do need to amend the plan to show that COVID testing and or treatment, depending on the carrier or administrator, is covered at 100% as a result of FFCRA. If you're working with a third-party administrator who creates that summary plan description for you, we can check in with them to see if they're doing it. I'm not sure what the status is. If it's a wrap document that BIM's created or a BIM strategic partner has created, we can amend the plan to allow for that testing. What you want to do is document anytime there's a benefit change. So FFCRA gave a benefit change for COVID testing. It also says if you have a high deductible health plan that's HSA eligible, that COVID testing covered at 100% does not disqualify your health savings account. So again, those are things that if you, the employer, generated the document, you're going to want to include that. If you're fully insured and the Anthem, Humana, United created that document on the fully insured side, I believe they issued some sort of language that goes with the amendment, but we can double check on that. And I'll go back and see for sure if I can find out what each carrier has done so we can add that on the FAQs for Tuesday Talk. The second component of that is the expanded family medical leave as well as employee paid sick leave. I would strongly encourage you to put those two policies in your employee handbook, whether someone has taken advantage of them or not. I have sample policies that we'll put on the FAQ site so you can have access to those, or I can email them to you directly. Just shoot me an email and I'll flip them over. But basically, you need to have a documentation of a policy of any kind where you've got someone on leave, you're paying for benefits, you're doing different eligibility. So we've got the leniency with the fully insured carriers to leave people on the plan for 2 months. Did you as an employer choose to do that? Or did you term everyone and they're now on unemployment and COBRA? We want to document that. Or if you kept them on the plan, are you giving them a premium holiday or are they paying their share of the premium? If they're paying their share of the premium, you're going to want to document how that's being collected. You can use your FMLA policy to mirror for the emergency family medical leave, but you definitely need a policy for that paid sick leave. Speaking of premium holidays, if you are a self-funded employer and you're giving a premium holiday, you've got, let's say, you've kept everybody on, or maybe you've I've got one employer, they've kept everybody on staff, they've reduced some hours, they're keeping everybody's benefits in play, but they're also paying 100% of the coverage for 2 months so that the reduction in hours doesn't hurt as bad. And as a result, we amended their ERISA wrap plan document to show, as a result of a national pandemic, the employer has the ability to allow for a premium holiday, and it has effective, I think we did through April 1st through December 31st. And we chose December 31st because we don't know when this is going to be over. We certainly don't expect it to be that long, but we didn't want to have to amend the plan a second time. If you're self-insured and you're thinking about doing that, there's other questions that need to be asked. We need to confirm with your stop-loss carrier to make sure it's not an issue. We need to make sure that everything is documented properly. So if these are things you're thinking about doing or want to do, I would highly recommend a conversation with your account executive or account manager to make sure that we've thought of everything and to make sure that you've got the proper documentation in place. because that's part of this return to work checklist, which I'll jump into in just a moment. But if you need more clarification on that, please don't hesitate to ask. Again, I'm available for questions, answers anytime. You can always email me directly at deanna@bimgroup.us, and it's DEANNA. So just some things to think about. All right, we have another question. Have we heard any rumblings of the IRS extending grace periods or increasing rollover maximums for medical FSA? Some people had to cancel elective surgeries in our new plan years starting in July, so there's a lot of money about to be lost. Brandon, what I would say to that is talk to your account executive to work with your third-party administrator. So, for example, I know one of BIM's strategic partners has automatically extended the grace period by, I think, 15 days. And another third-party administrator is saying, we can't do it, but if the employer wants to amend their plan and allow for a grace period, that's up to them. But of course, that would have to fall within the IRS guidelines. As of right now, I haven't seen anything come out of the IRS regarding the grace period or the maximum rollover, but we get new information every single day, so that could change without thinking twice. So I apologize. I got a phone call. I thought I had my phone turned off and did not. So just some things that we need to be on the watch for is definitely the IRS grace period for the FSAs. So I can't multitask anymore. I was pulling up Facebook on my computer to make sure you all didn't lose me with that phone call and said Facebook. So, too much going on. So that's all. That's a great question though. I mean, because they've extended other things on the IRS side. Who knows? They could do it tomorrow and it falls under some obscure law that's passed. I did see that just as they announced yesterday that Congress was coming back to Washington, they announced today that they're not coming back to Washington yet. So, again, things are changing by the minute. I am going to go ahead and kind of jump into some of the return to work piece that I wanted to cover today, but please feel free to ask a question. It does not have to be on the topic that we're talking about. It does not have to be in line with where we're at, but it's just something that you've thought of. There are no stupid questions. There's only good questions, and we're all learning through this. So just remember that it's worth asking the question, because I guarantee somebody else is wanting to ask it as well. So again, this return to work checklist, this is thinking about post-COVID. How do we get back to work? How do we get back to the playing field and move forward? So let me answer Becky's question real quick here. I can only see part of it. Let me see if I can get the rest of it. Do you have any resources that you can send regarding what offices companies need to do to start bringing their employees back? Specifically, making sure we're doing everything to not be held liable if we bring our employees back and then someone gets a virus. Okay, so I think this return to work policy will help you, Becky, but I also have a really nice booklet from Fisher Phillips that is Beyond the Curve, Post-Pandemic Back to Business FAQs for Employers. It has a lot of information about workplace safety, and that's probably exactly what you're looking for. So not only will I send that to you, Becky, but we'll also post the link on the FAQs because it's a great document. It's pretty thick, pretty hefty. But I want to make sure that you have it, and I'm going to try to break it up into chunks. That's kind of what the next few Tuesday Talks are going to be about. We're going to break up into pieces how to bring our employees back and how to bring them back safely. I also want to caveat that to say, if you are in a medical field, dental field, optometrist office, manufacturing plant, there may be requirements specific to your facility or your line of work that the Kentucky state would issue regulations on how to do that. This is going to be an overall review of what's required. So I would say please press a little further. Make sure that we're not missing something, especially if you're a medical office, a dental office, a vision office, something along those lines. So like I said in the onset, I have a dentist friend who's like, we have to have a patient in every other chair. He's got 4 chairs and there's 2 dentists in the office. So he can only have 1 patient at a time. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that you have the FFCRA poster in a visible place. That's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act poster. It was issued a couple of weeks ago. We linked it on the Tuesday Talk page. You want that where people can see it. Where employees are working from home, you can send it by email or you can post it to the intranet or an employee website for them. But you also want that posted in your workplace when we can go back into our workplace. So again, these are not necessarily things you can do right this moment, but there are definitely things you can be planning on to know when you go back to work day 1, you've got a checklist you need to walk through. You may want to look at and review your hiring practices and policies. Have your staffing needs changed? Do you need to change your benefits or pay to be a little more competitive? Can you use remote interviewing process? We've talked in our Bim Group world about how much we've realized we can do via Zoom or Teams meeting versus face-to-face to not only save time, but also be able to be more clear with folks, because sometimes this stuff gets a little complicated and it's hard to explain over the phone, definitely hard to explain over email. But if you can hop on Zoom or Teams or GoToMeeting and see that person face to face and engage with them, it makes a world of difference. With that being said, could some of your work be done remote? So if you've got an employee who's struggling with a schedule, maybe they've got childcare issues or something like that, is it worth exploring, hey, can we let this person work from home a couple of days a week or 3 days a week or 1 day a week? And I think it's really showed the flexibility in workplace business as well. And again, I'll talk about Bim Group because we were able to pivot and keep going as though nothing lapsed, and we've all kind of modified our schedules. I have 2 little girls at home, 3 and 6. I have a sitter here during the day just to help me because you can't get a whole lot done with a 3 and a 6-year-old. But at 4 o'clock, I'm usually shutting down and I'm doing homework with the 6-year-old. I've got my phone up so I can catch email if anything urgent's coming through. Or if I need to, this morning I had to get on a Zoom call with her teacher at 10 a.m. I had the flexibility to run and do that. I just used my lunch hour for that, hop back on. So it's about being flexible and finding out what's going to work for you. You may want to update your onboarding policies because now we've got a whole nother level of workplace safety we have to think about. And then you also want to think about recalling, are you recalling some of your workers that were laid off? Are you recalling all of them? Do you have written policies and practices in place to know who to recall, how to recall, to make sure who to recall and how to recall them to make sure you're not discriminating against a certain group of employees? I mean, obviously you don't want it to look like you just brought back all your 20-year-olds and did not bring back your 60-year-olds or a certain class of people or a certain group of people. You want to make sure you clearly define who you're bringing back and how you're bringing them back if you're not bringing them all back. Because again, you don't want to have someone point a finger towards being discriminatory. You want to review and revise leave policies. And we've kind of been talking about that already. If you have not added the employer paid family medical leave or the employer paid sick leave to your handbook, you're going to want to add that in if they're required to do that. So if you're under 500, you're going to want to add that in. If you're under 50 and you don't have anything regarding FMLA, you need an emergency paid family medical leave policy because that now applies. You want to make sure you have solid information on PTO, vacation rollovers, grace periods, revise any guidelines for vacation if it's forfeited and not used by the year end, what that looks like. And I kind of laughed. I was like, I had several vacation days planned prior to this, I've not taken them because I can't go anywhere. So why am I going to use my vacation days? So what does that mean if we don't go back into a building to work until September, and somebody has 10 vacation days and you can only roll over 2? Are you going to let them take 8 vacation days between September and Christmas when everybody else is going to be taking 8, 10, 12 vacation days between September and end of year? Or are you going to allow for a rollover of more days? So again, just things to be thinking about now, because these questions are going to come up. And when we go back to the building, and I'm just kind of using that as a reference, there's going to be a whole lot more other things going on than us trying to sit down and figure out, what are we going to do about vacation time? So now's a great time to think about that. You want to ensure that all employees have access to and understand your leave policies. You may want to consider looking at your bereavement policies and making changes there. Some may be more gracious than others. Some maybe you don't have a bereavement policy, or maybe you have one just for an immediate spouse. Maybe you need to add parents or children or something. Maybe you need to expand that bereavement policy. You also want to, I think, and I just said this, review and revise your home and child care policies. So your work from home and child care policies. Update work travel policies in light of any new orders that we may have, especially in Kentucky, any new practices being implemented in the workplace to keep employees or customers safe. I don't know this for sure. I think there's still the ban on not traveling to Tennessee, or if you come in from Tennessee, there's a 14-day quarantine. I could be wrong about that. I've kind of blocked that out because nobody can go anywhere. But if that still applies and you have business, you're in Southern Kentucky and you've got business in Tennessee, how do you make that work? So again, just thinking through the little details that maybe don't seem important now, but will be when we go back to work in a building. We're all working, right? We're just not in our buildings. Review and reinstate provisions for your benefit policies or eligibility periods, waiting periods. I know we've had some employers that maybe had a 60-day waiting period, and now they're like, I want to do date of hire, but maybe they only wanted to do it for 6 months. Well, we can't be flip-flopping on what that is. So we need to pick that, figure out what that's going to be, put that in place with the proper documentation so that it aligns with what we're actually practicing. And then once we've made all these changes to all these policies, you've got to get them out to your employees. So you'll want to distribute all those to new and revised policies to your team. Beyond that, the next thing would be just some kind of general return to work kind of policies. That's definitely not all of it, but this is just, again, this is going to be a 3, 4, 5 part conversation. Some things to think about to ensure workplace safety as we go back to work is social distancing. Do you provide protective equipment? How do you do temperature checks if we still have to do that? Is there a testing, isolating, contact tracking system? Sanitation, how are you cleaning your building? How are you cleaning your areas? What are your high touch areas? Use and disinfection of common and high traffic areas. And again, business travel, going back to that, how are you going to handle that to keep not only your employees safe, but your customers safe? Again, we'll have to follow state and local regulations as it is to providing personal protection equipment, checking temperatures. I have friends that work in a factory, which is actually one of our clients, and they're checking temperatures as you walk in the door. Employers are encouraged to not let symptomatic people return to work until they're cleared by a medical provider. So you may be ready to open the doors and bring everybody back, but you've got 7 people who are not feeling the best, and maybe they're running a fever, maybe they're not, but they're not sure what's going on. Let those folks go home, get cleared by a doctor, and bring them back, because you don't want to say, oh no, you have to work, and then you find out that maybe they're asymptomatic, but maybe they test positive for COVID, and now you have to deal with that. So you want to try to avoid that at all costs. Phase 1 is in the Fisher-Phillips booklet is that it's recommended to be implemented when certain factors are met. And that's where we are with the medical facilities reopening. And that is the first step in us getting back on our feet. But some of the things they mentioned was you want to continue to encourage remote work and telework where possible. If it's possible, when we are allowed to come back into the building, to return folks back to the office in phases instead of bringing everyone back at once, especially if you're a large number of people in a small place. Close common areas where personnel are likely to congregate or gather. Enforce social distancing. Minimize non-essential business travel. Consider special accommodations for folks who are vulnerable, who are in our vulnerable population. So maybe you have someone who's older, or maybe they have a serious health condition that's underlying. You don't want to put them right in the middle of the room where everybody's going to be coming and going. Maybe consider putting them in a office at the end of the hall, or maybe it's someone who is undergoing chemotherapy and they're trying to work, but they have a suppressed immune system. You want to keep those things in mind when you're going back to the building. And then, our schools are still closed. Our daycares are still closed. Those are things we have to think about too as we move into, again, phase 2. So with phase 2, those common areas, constrict those. Make sure they're not up for everyone that's gathering. Some of the things that fall under that are, again, the non-essential business travel, the special accommodations, and remote working where possible. And again, I'll go back to, Bim Group. We talked about, is our new normal some people working remote? Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's more doing remote work with clients where we can engage with them more often. And again, that face-to-face interaction is very different than having a phone conversation or an email conversation. And then once we get into the point where we're through the phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, and our shelter-in-place orders are lifted, how do we decide when we're going to reopen? I mean, how do you know when, okay, is it time to go back to work now? We want to make sure that our buildings are clean. We want to make sure our people understand. We want to make sure those that are immune compromised feel safe. But as a whole, as a business, are you looking to continue to limit non-essential employee travel? Are you looking to shifting to maybe a more remote workforce versus a internal workforce? Encourage people who are sick to stay home. Establish a routine to where employees who maybe aren't feeling the best, maybe you're doing a daily health check of some sort. Maybe you're continuing to do temperatures every morning. Monitor absenteeism and be flexible. Maybe have flex time off policies, or change how you do your work schedule. Maybe you're a 40-hour-a-week employer, but you could go to a 36-hour, and that 36-hour could be 3 days of 12 hours versus 5 days of 8 hours. Again, just thinking about that flexibility and how you get back into that routine. Create emergency communication channels for employees if you have not already done so. And then have an action plan in place should someone test positive for COVID-19 going forward. Because here's what's not going to happen. It's not going to be lifted and us go back to building work and no one ever gets COVID again. We need to be able to respond quicker, more efficiently than ever before. Because now we know what to expect. If someone shows up, they get tested positive for COVID, we're going to disinfect the areas they've been. We're going to figure out who they've been around. We're going to notify those people. Those people maybe go in quarantine or self-isolation until they can be tested and cleared. So we just need to be able to think about next steps from there. And again, this is a great time to be thinking about those policies, putting them in writing, and having them in place. One of the questions in this FAQ, which I think is good, is should we continue social distancing? And yeah, at this point, yes. this is the immediately back to work. So state ban's been lifted. We can go back to work into a building. Let's continue to encourage social distancing. Again, some duties, some places it's not going to be able to do that because of space. Other places do it as permits, or maybe you only bring part of your staff back instead of your whole staff at one time. And then make sure that every area is cleaned prior to reopening. You want to make sure that the CDC has released guidance on cleaning and disinfecting public spaces, workplaces, businesses, schools, etc. Review those guidelines and make sure you get that done before opening your building back up for folks. And it's some of the things that we've all been doing during this time of self-isolation or self-quarantine or travel restriction, whatever it may be called, is, cleaning with detergent and soap and water, cleaning high-touch areas, disinfecting high-touch areas, using diluted bleach on surfaces, making sure the cleaning staff's wearing gloves and masks and handling trash appropriately, providing personal protection equipment where possible. All of those things we want to keep in mind. One thing I was learned yesterday is everybody's wearing gloves and everybody's wearing masks, but if you don't properly take the mask off and you don't properly remove your gloves, all you're doing is cross-contaminating. You can't take your gloves off, so immediately touch your face and take your mask off and then put your mask in your pocket. Okay, so now you've cross-contaminated your hands, you've touched your face in the process. So there's a whole method to properly taking off a mask and properly taking off your gloves. So those are just things to think about as well and keep on top of mind. So one of the things that also is in here is about prohibiting visitors possibly to your workplace. So, one of the things when we go back to the building to work is deciding, do you allow visitors in the building or do you stop visitors for now? And for now, I would say, as well as Fisher Phillips, keep those visitors at bay. You want to make sure that your employees stay healthy without bringing in someone else from the outside that there's no way to trace or track. And they actually provide a great notice that you can put on your door, your office building door, that says they're restricting visitors. So just some things to think about. It goes on a little deeper about just cleaning and disinfecting the workplace and notifying employees should you have an outbreak. And then it moves into a little bit more of lifting other shelter-in-place orders. Because we're going to have our shelter-in-place that's going to open, and then I think it's going to be restricted, and then it's going to open up more. So just some things to keep in mind for workplace safety. I'm going to stop right there because we're at about 20 till, and I want to make sure we get any questions answered. Next week, we will join back up at 2 o'clock and continue talking about reopening post-COVID. The next section is on workplace privacy and then some human resources consideration. And we will definitely cover that, some best practices to cover. So I will open the floor for questions. I mean, it has been. So hopefully this has been helpful. I wanted to try to talk about something new. So let's see if I've missed anything. I have not missed any questions. So, and again, if you've got any questions, definitely let me know. My camera light just died, so I apologize for that. Hopefully you can still see me. Sorry. We will get this video uploaded to the Tuesday Talk site, followed by the FAQ, hopefully sooner than later. These are some great questions we've had today. So if there's not any questions, I will let us get back to our day. But again, I hope this has been helpful. Hope everyone's staying safe, washing their hands, maintaining social distancing, trying to keep up with what's going on in the world today with now we got to do this, now we don't got to do this, now we do have to do this. If you don't have a mask, get a mask. they're all over Etsy and Facebook and wherever you may turn, except Amazon or any local store. You can't find them there. So my husband owns a cleaning company, and I had to end up buying him masks from someone local because we can't find them anywhere. And he's almost out of gloves, so we've got to find a restock of gloves. And footies. He wears footies, so when he goes in, he's not tracking in anything from the outside on that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I don't see any questions popping up. I am going to let everybody get back to their day. Be safe, and if you need us, you can always, like I said, email or call me, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you, and I hope you have a good afternoon.